Oh, wait a minute, so people can.
We're here.
Yeah,
Are we
we're here.
live? We're
We're
here.
live. I think we're live.
Hey.
We've got
Hi,
people who
friends.
are early to the party, huh?
Hi, friends.
I need my glasses to see who's jumping in there.
We got to give Kelly Shannon a shout out. She looks to be the first one to the party. So
yeah.
Well done.
And Mauricio's on there too. Mauricio's a good friend.
And thank you, Lori. I appreciate that Mother's Day shout out.
Skolnick's here. Skolnick's, give her a shout out for sure. Ernie, how's San Diego? Finnegan, Kip Horton. Who's that Kip Horton guy? He's trying to sell insurance to people.
We got Annie Dion.
Yeah.
All our friends are here.
Oh, Ernie.
Yeah, Ernie's on. Just wait another minute here, and then you can rock and roll.
All right,
are you
let's
excited?
Kick this off, man. We're a couple of minutes after the hour. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another State of the Industry update. My name is Harold Batiste. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales Operations here at HPN Global. Many of you joined us 2 weeks ago for our last webcast. I understand we had somewhere around 40,000 views, so it was a large audience. And the theme 2 weeks ago was being resilient, and being resilient in the wake of this global pandemic that we're all in. And you heard a lot about our approach to the shifting, rebooking meetings, anything that had to cancel or postpone due to the pandemic. We talked a lot about that. And what we tried to do is just give insight and perspective through the lens of both the meeting planner and the hotel, which I think we can all admit can be different at times when navigating through these moves. So there's no doubt in the level of disruption COVID-19 has brought to our lives personally and professionally, but it's time to look ahead. And that's what we're going to focus on today is, how do we turn to that next chapter? And in some instances, rewrite the book on getting back to the business of meeting again. Many hotels have been closed or are closed, or they've been open with barely any occupancy levels. So what will a hotel's first group experience look like when they do reopen? What measures around cleanliness are hotels taking to instill attendee confidence that they'll be safe? And, how will contracting future meetings look? And how will it change? So to help answer a lot of these questions today and some more, and we're going to have a real productive dialogue, I have back with us our chairman and CEO, Bill Kilburg, along with our senior vice president and managing director of meeting services, Jill Dasher. And we're also fortunate enough today to have a special guest with us from Omni Hotels and Resorts, Vice President of Sales, Cara Banasch. So we're back at it again, gang. And Cara, thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. And first of all, we absolutely love the audience and the level of participation on our last webcast. And we really want this to be more of a discussion versus us just talking kind of at you, right? We have a real diverse audience again today, whether it be meeting planners or it be hoteliers, and the unique perspectives are really valuable to our discussion. So use the chat box, and I promise we'll save some time at the end to get some good Q&A dialogue. Yeah. So with that said, Bill Kilburg, let's have you kick us off with just some insight on the industry over the last 2 weeks since we were together, and just thoughts on how we flip to that next chapter.
And the first thing is, I always try and open this up by saying we feel for our friends in the industry, right? And we have a lot of friends on the sales fronts that are furloughed, but there's also bellmen and front desk clerks and maids, that are out of work right now. And we're looking forward to turning the page, and as I think Jill coined it, yesterday, rewriting the book on how to get meetings cranking again, right? So what I see, and I've been handling, as Harold, you have been handling a lot of what we're calling blocking and tackling right now on lift and shift, and I see the backside of the hurricane, and I think anything that was going to lift and shift is moved through June for sure, and meetings are going to look different this fall, and I think that's one of the reasons Cara is here and Jill are here. They're going to talk about what that looks like. How do you go execute something, right? With space different, is how do you serve a cocktail party? There's a lot of moving parts on that. But I think functionally, anything that was COVID related probably has flushed through. Now, I did a lift and shift yesterday for a customer that had an underlying economic issue. So that's in my mind, that's different than a COVID issue. Okay, so this, it's not, hey, we're canceling because we don't want to meet because of COVID, which is the stuff that's through June, right? And hotels are going to be able to accommodate groups on a going forward basis. And I'll talk about force majeure again here in a second because everybody wants me to talk about that. But I think there are going to be clients who have their business has an underlying economic issue that's been caused by this pandemic. Okay. And then, so now it's hey, we need to go do a move because my people aren't going to show up. It's not, it's not force majeure. Clearly it's not force majeure. But my guys aren't showing up. Right. So now we got to go do a move. So that was when we moved from January 21 into 22 to give their people time to get their businesses back in order. Hotel, and I'll give a shout out to Brian from the Hilton Inner Harbor, Baltimore, who was phenomenal on the phone yesterday, and we solved the problem in 4 minutes. That the client was going to hire an attorney to sue the hotel over. I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. Okay, I'm seeing attrition clauses being workable. Attrition on rooms, attrition on food and beverage. I'm seeing I keep using the term hard cancel. If it's just hey, we're not showing up, then gloves are off and everybody starts getting up in arms. Like if you're a planner listening to this and your CEO, your ED saying just cancel the meeting for October, and we don't have something we can bring to the hotel to say, let's help solve this problem, you're going to be, I can tell you right now, you're going to be in what I call a tussle, right? Okay, a little bit of a legal tussle. So attrition's workable. We can get better attrition rates because, obviously there's going to be a virtual component that Jill's going to talk about. Did I point that way or this one? Jill's going to talk about. But a hard cancel is a hard no. It's just a no. And I think planners, I know that every planner who's going to see this has somebody who's in their office saying, what's our risk? How do we mitigate it? Should we cancel? And I'm telling you that attrition's easy to talk about. Easy is the wrong word. Attrition is a manageable conversation. Food and beverage attrition is, again, manageable because what Cara and Jill are going to talk about on how to service. But a hard cancel is a hard no. New contracts are super flexible. So if you've got new business, there are several hotel companies that have very flexible new terms for a new piece of business, not a lift and shift, but a brand new piece of business. I'm just looking at my stuff here. So let me talk about force majeure again once, and then I'll kind of hand it back to you here, okay? So I tell people there's 3 functional rules. Because if you go call an attorney, again, if you're a planner and you call your attorney, they're going to charge you $1,000 and say, here's how force majeure works. Here's how I believe it functionally works. Is the hotel open? Okay. And if the answer is yes, can I get there? I mean, planes are flying right now, and I saw that airline lift was up 3 times last week what it was 3 weeks ago. So planes are moving, and there's a governmental ban in place that affects my meeting. Now, we've all talked a couple times there's going to be a red versus blue thing, but there's 44 states that are opening up. Now, Illinois and California might be problems, but if the hotel's open, if you can get there and there's no ban, it's not force majeure. And the hotel's not going to agree that it's force majeure. So, and again, smart hoteliers are being flexible. For planners, I just want to give one thing, and I'll give it back to you, Harold. One of my mother's favorite sayings was, "You catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar." And I was talking to a planner yesterday who said, "Hey, my CEO is going to call him and tell him we're going to sue him, and we're never going to use this hotel brand again in the rest of eternity." And I'm like, well, that's a plan. Okay. Why don't you let me call the guy? And in a 4-minute conversation, I moved, I lifted and shifted and saved them a $300,000 cancellation fee. Honey, not vinegar.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I tell you and I'll reiterate some of your points, and I got a couple of other points here before I punt to Jill here, and Cara. So, as far as lifting and shifting meeting dates to the future. So what are we seeing in the trenches now? And it's been so fluid. We were on 2 weeks ago, and that time is different than today. The results and the outcome of a request to cancel or postpone a meeting are now varied, and it's depending on the state's approach to reopening. And the country is moving toward reopening, and it's a state mandated plan that's being rolled out in individual phases. And so what's happening in Texas is different than what's happening in Illinois. So that's the conversation we're having with our clients is, hey, what's the executive order and what is a part of that multi-phase reopening plan? And that's what we are focused on as we talk to our clients and obviously engage into the hotels. We said a lot about this on our last call, is that there's hotels and then there's smart hotels. And I think, the smart hotels are getting it. And sure, is there a ban that's in play that a hotel, you can take a hard line and say, you know what, it's not force majeure. If you're going to cancel, here are your liquidated damages. I think I am beginning to see, and we are beginning to see, more hotels go to the side of trying to find some amicable solution that benefits both sides. And all right, is your cancellation, $150,000, right? And maybe you have $15,000 on the books as a deposit. The smart hotels are like, look, we'll keep your $15K as liquidated damages. We understand these are the unprecedented times, right? Rebook with us, and we'll restart your deposit schedule, and everyone parts as friends. And that's not going to happen everywhere, but I think the smart hotels, and there are hotels that are in our audience here, and maybe some of them will chime in. It's not always going to be the case, It's not a one-size-fits-all approach to how we engage with hotels on our clients' behalf, but this is where the relationships prevail. So moving forward, so in the last 2 weeks, and Bill, you just attested to this, we've seen the hotels and the airlines roll out their a more of a robust plan on cleanliness and how they intend to make travelers feel safe. I got a call Monday for the first time in a month that it was a favor request, and a friend calls me and he says, "Hey, can you get me into this hotel?" And I'm thinking it's something for next year. He's like, "No, for next week." I was like, "Oh, really?" Yeah. And so he wants some beach time with his family. So people are traveling, and what I think is going to really lead us into getting back to corporate travel and meetings is that first trip you take with your family to get out of this kind of cabin fever that quarantine has created. And you're going to go and either get in a car and you're going to go check in a hotel. You're going to get on a plane. You're going to get through TSA that first time. sit in your plane in your seat. You're going to see people in masks. You're probably going to be in a mask, but you're going to go have a nice trip. You're going to come home, and then it's going to be time to go travel for a meeting. Well, you've already got that first trip out of the way. And so it's going to take that to get back to, I think, meetings. And so, Jill and Cara, I kind of want to bring you in. And Cara, thank you again so much for joining us. I really want to hear the insight.
But before you punt to them, I've gotten a couple of questions about force majeure again. I just want to clarify.
Okay.
One thing, and then we'll talk about how to execute a meeting. Is the hotel open?
Right.
Can you get there? Is there a government ban? Okay, that's it. If your company has a ban, it doesn't matter. Hotel doesn't care. And I know no company wants to hear that, but if you're a company who has an internal ban, or a university or whatever, that does not affect the contractual obligations under that contract. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not fear majeure, it's force majeure. So if your people are afraid to fly, again, doesn't count. So,
yeah.
But again, we're able to work out most of those things somehow anyway. So
yeah.
So
Jill, take us through kind of your side from an operational and execution perspective, and I'd love to. I'm sure our audience would love to hear, obviously, from our special guest Cara joining us here. And what is the future of meetings look like from your perspective?
And thank you for asking. And first of all, I'm thrilled to be able to have this conversation with my friend Cara. We've talked about a lot of things. And what we're talking about is what planners are looking for in guidance as we move back to in-person meetings. And that's what Cara and I are going to speak to. Restoring confidence to the planners, but to the attendees. If you're looking at any surveys, you're seeing GBTA is saying there's optimism starting in the next couple of months, right? Starting with leisure travel and then business travel beyond that. PCMA recently did a survey. I think you all probably saw that. 28% came back and said we're chomping at the bit to get back to meetings, right? But there's that 48% that is a bit hesitant to travel due to economic, safety, sanitation, fear, right? So what Cara and I really want to talk about today, and the conversation we're going to have, is how are we rewriting that playbook for planning meetings to help restore confidence and bring people back to the business of planning their meetings and getting people on site. So Cara, we've been talking a lot about this. Where I want to start with you is tell me about that new playbook that you're rewriting. We've talked about duty of care, sanitation, food and beverage guidelines. Tell me what your hotels are doing, because I think we're really interested to know things that you're seeing and doing with an Omni that you can share with our planners.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for having me. And first, I just want to thank Bill and Harold and Jill for inviting me to be here. Obviously, I wear an Omni uniform, but we're really looking at this from an industry perspective. The health of the industry and how we come back together is of the greatest concern to all of us. So, I'll share my perspective from an Omni standpoint, but I think, we're all better friends than we are competitors in many cases. So I think, the perspectives I'll share, I'll try to blend, for everybody. From the broad end of the funnel, I think in terms of what we're seeing, it's the same as what you're seeing, a little bit of inertia, a lot of people still having internal organizational dialogue, not keen to start making decisions, still a little unsure about things. And I think, this is big picture, but it starts with a shared philosophy of openness. And, from a leadership perspective, we've got a great leadership team here. Dan Surratt, Diane Sanker in Chicago, Mark Wykes, Bob Filippelli. And, we're really working with our leaders, talking through, first and foremost, our priorities. It's got to be that we meet safe. This is everybody's top priority. We want to create assurances, not just for organizations, but for their attendees, as well as for, our associates, that we can put people back together in a space and keep everybody safe. We want to be able to meet strong. Meetings, obviously we all love meetings. We do this because we love, what we do in our industry. But the reality is that people hold meetings because they have objectives. They want to share information, or they want to create inspiration, or they want to train people, or they want to inspire new thinking. We've got to be able to meet the objectives of what the meeting was designed for originally. We've got to be able to meet financial objectives. And then, last but not least, this is a different time and space in our industry. We talk a lot about meeting together or meeting in the middle. We've all got to be prepared to take a step forward in a different way than maybe we would have 3 months ago, 6 months ago, certainly a year ago. And we've all got to be prepared to be creative and find different solutions. So mentality and perspective is where it starts. And then, we really kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this. One, people want information. And so, we've been in a little bit of a different position than others. We're smaller, but we're a group company. Our buildings, for the most part, do between 60 and 80% group. So for us, this has really been our greatest priority in repositioning and coming back. And I think, the information around, cleanliness and guest rooms and meeting space is one thing, but, people want to get into a more detailed dialogue about flow. How do we manage the flow of people in our spaces? How do we deal with food and beverage, not just banquet service, but our restaurants and our outlets? How are we dealing with, audio visual? How are we dealing with, every element of the business? And so, we talk a lot about meeting people where they are. If somebody wants a one-sheeter that they, put on their registration page because that's as deep as they want to get with their attendees, we've got that. But like most other companies, we've got that detailed manifesto. And, we haven't been in a big hurry to release ours, because one of the things that's really important to us is that, with a lot of our buildings are closed right now. We're getting ready to start reopening those. And as we do so, we're going to ramp up slowly. But we want to really have our sales teams trained to speak to the detail in this. And so, we've got those basic resources that planners can share with attendees if, they want the sort of base level of information. But as deep as people want to go, we're going to have those resources as well. And, we're going to make sure that everybody's trained to speak to those. And I think, that's the second piece of it. A lot of questions around resources. How do we plan? How do we do a site tour? How do we do a BEO meeting? How do we do a pre-con? I never got to the hotel to do my menu tasting with the chefs. We have a whole group of convention services leaders and sales leaders at different partners, Encore, a division of, PSAV now, amazing partner to us. They've been at the table with all of this conversation, and we've really got multiple different levels of solutions to be able to actually facilitate those same touch points that we would normally have had in our business moving along. And I think that that's been a big question. People have said, I can't get a hold of anybody. I hope that that's, not been a problem at Omni, but, we're doing our best under different circumstances. And, if we can get past that, certainly we have the right tools and resources in place for everybody to be able to take those first steps back into getting their planning on, right?
Yeah. Can we talk about, let's just touch upon a few of them. We're getting a lot of questions about how do I design socially distanced space with my hotel? Sure. We've talked about social tables as a great example of a platform that you can go in and do that. What are you doing or what are you seeing around socially distanced space, or let's say food and beverage? Can you just touch on a few nuggets that could really help our planners begin to understand what that landscape looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we moved our entire company to social tables as a platform last year. And I think anybody that has a level of familiarity with it knows, you can get in there and you can play with your space and do what you want to do. I think the better tool, as we see it, is to, get in there together and design the spaces that people need. So social tables starts with your square footage and creates a capacity that's based on fire codes and regional codes, those kinds of things. So, we've got our standard capacities. We've really looked at this in terms of an evolution. Right now, just like different states and the federal government is looking at this, we've got strict guidelines. So for the next 3 months, we're anticipating that, the spacing needs to be the most aggressive that we will probably see. We keep hearing that figure, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. As the year progresses and we move into the next phases, we anticipate that the spacing will be moderate. And then, here's the thing, none of us have a crystal ball. So we're really working together as we move forward about, what does this evolve to be as a standard? But, we've got a team here that's working on, variable capacities. Beyond that, we're looking at things a lot more creatively. Who hasn't joked? I'm going to admit that I have joked if I never had to sit at a banquet round of 8 again, it would be a happy day in my life. And, here's the thing, I may never have to sit at a banquet round of 8 again. So that's good news for me. But, I think we're looking at how do we create spaces that are a little bit more flexible? And I think that there's opportunity in this. We've seen a lot of success moving into this. We were seeing a lot of customers set up, variable types of seating within a room, some theater, some classroom, some standing spaces. We saw a lot of groups that were, wanting to set up, webcasting into foyer space for people that are, out there. I think, we're just going to need to get creative as we move forward about a lot of different alternate types of setups that allow people to be comfortable in the space in a way that's right for them. So if we're putting 20 people in a room, those 20 people might feel differently about things. We want to give people options, and certainly we want to keep people safe.
Yeah, and let's touch upon that. You touched upon the virtual component and streaming, and that we see, big push to virtual in the short term, but hybrid going forward. So how do you address that? A lot of our planners are asking, how do I ensure that I have the bandwidth I need or the capabilities I need on the AV side to make sure I can live stream or, share my virtual meeting, as far as I need to. So can you just touch on that as well?
Absolutely. Well, Bill shared a quote from his mother. I'll share one from, my dad that, he always used to tell us, if you have a fear, just invite the devil to the table, right? So, we have always talked, I think, virtual meetings and whatnot at one time was, an alternate product to meeting. I think we've overcome that, meetings being business. We've proven the value of face-to-face, but this is it. We're here and now in this time and space, it's time to invite them to the table. So, Encore has always been a great partner to us from an AV perspective, but, we've really been working with them. We believe that almost every single meeting other than maybe social catering for the next 12 months and maybe for all of the rest of the future will incorporate that.
Right.
It starts for us with information and understanding. Planners have different variable levels of understanding of this. Some people are super, super savvy. Other people have never gone down this road. So, there's video conferencing, and then there's webcasting, and then there's web conferencing. And within the scope of that, there's different levels of engagement that you can, use, including chat. And so, we're really in the process of, building out packages. We're also in the process of educating our staff. It was, we'd taken a very passive role of, about this in the past. It was, hey, let me have you talk to the AV geeks about this. We're going to embrace them and bring them into the fold, and we're going to learn a lot more about this as we are progressing because, we've got to be ready to really understand, what are the different mechanisms allow us to do? How do the different mechanisms allow us to engage attendees? And then, third, what are the associated costs? So, from a virtual meetings perspective, I think there's an opportunity, and I'm going to admit it wasn't something that I spent an awful lot of time, looking at, and I've had to really educate myself about it. I think, this may be something that actually really improves our meeting experience. I think I've always been astonished at how much planners invest in their content, and it lives in real time, and then maybe it's lost. I think as we move forward, we look at this, and maybe this is a real opportunity for our industry to capture information and to be able to really share it, for a longer period of time with a longer audience. And those are all things that we're really working on to help people design into their new meetings, into what the new meetings look like.
Yeah, Cara, and it's gonna take us all, right? It's going to it's going to take us all to come together to figure out, what is this new norm here. So that's a really interesting insight from your side, Cara, and then Jill. and we'll come back to you, but I want to do a quick time check here and get to some Q&A. I mean, we've got our friends from all across the world. Funny how a lot of Omni folks are sitting on here, huh? Funny how that happens.
Shocking. Woo! Shocking.
But, you know, we've had some meeting planners chime in with some really good questions. So I'm going to go through and pick out a few questions here. I'll start with one here, and then we can just figure out who's going to be best apt to take it here. Here's one, and Bill, I may get this one back to you here. Okay. It's from Mary Sutter McCann here. In a lift and shift situation, are hotels obligated to abide by mandated local government regulations, whether it's sanitation, social distancing, et cetera? And if it's not clear at the time that the addendum is signed, how is that managed? So number one, every major hotel company has a sanitation plan. Okay, and a cleanliness plan, and they're all, by the way, if you go to our blog, I think we've gone out and gotten every company, and there's a list there. So if you want Marriott, Hilton, Omni, whoever, I think that's all going to get back to exactly what Cara was just talking about, and it's we're gonna what a meeting looked like last year is going to be a different look this fall. And but I think every smart hotelier, and I believe Cara is a smart hotelier, is going to have a plan. They're all sitting down saying, okay, what's the plan? And maybe the plan is, for a cocktail party, we've got grab and go food instead of past buffet or past butler pass. Or for a lunch, we've got a staged lunch. So lunch that used to be 60 minutes now takes 90, and we're going to run. Instead of 400 people at once, we're going to run 100 at a time, and you go at noon, you go at 12:15, you go at 12:30. Right. Like those are going to be flexible solutions. I don't believe those are long-term things, but those are going to be flexible solutions for the fall, functionally. And so if a hotel does a lift and shift, signs an addendum, what I would recommend is number one, when we do the lift and shift, we get a flexible attrition clause, a flexible F&B minimum clause. So as part of that lift and shift, we're helping the client get a little bit of risk mitigation, if you will. And Cara, you don't want to hear this, but a little bit of risk mitigation, if you will. And because Harold, you said this a couple of weeks ago, we're kind of building the car while we drive it right now, right? So we all may say, here's what we think it looks like, and again, all the smart hotels that I talk to have their smartest people putting together plans, right? Because they're in the business of filling rooms and serving food and beverage, and so they've got to figure out a way to do that with the social D, as I'm calling it. But there's and everyone's going to have to be a little flexible. But again, I'm seeing hotels. This is a long answer. Hotels are being flexible on attrition. They're being flexible on food and beverage attrition. If we're going to move it into another time period, if HPN's handling that, we're going to make sure that we modify those sorts of terms in the contract to mitigate the risk and the liability for the client who's doing the lift and shift. Does that make sense? That's it. Cara, you got any insight to that particular question?
She didn't like my answer.
Hey, listen, I mean, this is really a different time and space. And here's the thing, we're all in it together. So, right now, I think, we're all prepared to make different decisions than maybe we did historically. And everything's a dialogue, right? And I think we all have to enter that dialogue with an openness to hear, what everybody's objectives and concerns are. And that's the only way to come up with good solutions. So, it's, like it or don't like it, we've all got to be there and help move it forward.
Yeah. Candace Howard had a question here. How do you suggest navigating a decrease in your room block without compromising on space due to social distancing? And that's a great question. And I probably have done 60 of these in the last probably 30, 40 days that I've been involved in. And you hit on it, Cara. It's about the conversation. And when one of our associates comes to Bill and says, hey, I've got a situation with our client, they're going to move They want to take their block down, but they want to keep their same space. That's a conversation with the hotel. I mean, we can negotiate that, and sometimes those don't even come to us as executives for that. The associate that's handling your meeting or your account, at least here at HPN, and I'm sure this is happening with our competitors as well, but they have the ability to have that conversation with the hotel and again negotiate that piece of it. Again, it's not a one size fits all solution.
Right.
It depends on the state. It depends on all of those factors there. So,
but people who talk find solutions.
Right.
That's right.
And people who do not threaten find solutions. Right.
Absolutely.
We need to have a talk in a positive manner instead of a, hey, I'm never going to use this hotel company again for 75,000 years. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Let's work it out. Let's figure it out together.
Here's an interesting question from Colette Walker, and I'm not sure if Colette's a hotelier or a meeting planner, but how are meeting planners preparing for these conversations between hotels and clients? I'll give my 2-second answer to that is, first of all, it depends on who's pushing the buttons at the organization who has the program booked. Many planners are, in some cases, executing the logistics of planning a meeting for a higher entity, whether that's a vice president, a CEO, we'll call them the meeting owner, for example, purposes. And that conversation starts there. Typically, it's that meeting owner talking to either their director of meetings, it could be executive admin, it could be anybody. This is, hey, what is our risk in canceling this meeting? We can't have it in June or July, okay? And then that conversation then comes to us as the intermediary that's handling the account to our associate, and we start that dialogue with the hotel. And we're going to give you an honest answer, and we're going to engage with the hotel, and we're going to say, hey, our client is concerned about their meeting. Doesn't mean that they necessarily want to cancel, but they're concerned. So we want to just make sure we all understand what the damages are per the contract. And then the planner takes that back to the meeting owner, and then they figure out what they want to do from there. We typically will follow the lead of our client, with some typically, kind of expert, what I call expert consulting on how they should handle it based on what we're seeing in the meeting place, because we're dealing with these. I was on a client's call this morning, and I said, hey, look, it's Friday. I probably have had 45 of these exact calls just this week, and I can tell you what you're asking for, Mr. Client, is probably unrealistic, and it's probably not going to happen. Right.
I'm calling in a unicorn. Do you want me to go buy you a unicorn? Right.
Right. You said that the other day, and I thought that was hilarious. So that's, and I'd love to hear anybody's insight. My response was a little longer than 2 seconds, but Cara, I mean, with your hotels, and again, you're talking to all of your directors and sales and marketings for all of Omni. When they're first getting that call, what's the instruction, right? What's the directive of how your hotels are handling those, what I call knee-jerk requests to, hey, it's COVID-19, we want to cancel?
Well, I mean, it really comes back to that philosophy I shared at the very beginning, seek to understand, right? And, ask good questions, listen, find out what the organizational issues are. Bill's done, I think, one of the best jobs I've seen in my career of explaining force majeure in a really, easy to understand way. Where we get into gray area is, when it's just difficult for people to actualize a meeting and the request is, can we move it or can we change it? And, I think, most of us are, in a place where, we're really trying to understand what's going on with the customer. This is a business that, I've never liked the whole concept of, seller's market, buyer's market. If you're in it to last and to build a career in this business, then relationships are longer than, a single economic cycle. We have to be prepared to have a conversation and listen to what's going on. We've had groups that were, emergency physicians, they had groups that fell outside of the window of what was really force majeure, but we had to have conversations about understanding what their challenges were. There's always an exception to the rule, and I think it starts with a conversation, but it also needs to start with everybody being willing to take a step in a direction that might not have been what they thought when they got on the phone or before they got on the phone, and that's really about flexibility and understanding. I think we try to create guidelines for people. I haven't said to any hotel, hey, beyond XYZ date, we aren't going to have any kind of a conversation about moving a group. You guys have done a beautiful job. I think, Diane Sanker and I spent a good amount of time, really auditing some of the rebookings that we had. And HPN, as a singular entity, I think has done a really great job of managing through changing bookings. When we start a conversation with, hey, we're really challenged around this booking, but we want to talk to you about what we think we can do. Can we look at a different date? Can we look at a different year? Or, hey, we've got a different piece of business. That certainly helps. But on our side of the equation, we've really coached people to say, listen, understand, and then, ultimately respect the relationship and the business side of it. So, it's not a clean cut answer, but it's an honest answer.
Great. I've got two questions here, and then we'll probably look to get to kind of close our time because we're getting to time here. And then the last question, I'll punt to you, Jill, because I think you have a great insight on this. But the first question is from Dave Olenek here, and Dave says, can HPN organize these negotiations with their client and the hotel all together on one call? And the answer is absolutely. In some cases, it is a scenario where the HPN associate may say, hey, client, I understand your concern. I'm going to go and at least tee this conversation up with the hotel. And then that could either turn to, or sometimes we lead with this and say, let's everyone get on a call. Where this HPN associate, it's the client and the hotel, and let's all talk together to work to again, an amicable solution to whatever the issue is. So we always love it when we can get everyone on a call. In some cases, especially when we have to go pretty high up the flagpole. So it may be a scenario where we have to get a sales leader or a GM involved. In some cases, we may not pull in the meeting planner or our client in those cases. Can I throw this in there, Harold? Sure.
We've also stepped in and helped entities that aren't necessarily our clients because we haven't touched that initial contract, but they feel a little out of water. And so we have definitely stepped in to provide guidance because I think that's been a huge key for us is being a resource in the industry and providing guidance, whether it be on the hotel contract side or planning or virtual, just to have those conversations to help navigate, whatever address, whatever issue they were looking to address. So we do that as well.
Yeah, if you're a meeting planner that's on this webcast and you necessarily aren't a client of ours, that doesn't mean you can't call us or reach out to us and just ask a question.
Yeah, always.
Any one of our associates will be over the moon to give you some of their expert advice, just because, again, this is what we are doing on a day-to-day level here.
Yes.
So I'm gonna move to one last question here, I think, and then Bill, I may get back to you to kind of close it out here. And for questions we're not getting to, we'll make sure we get them answered here. But I got to go back and see who asked this question because it was a great question about. I'm gonna paraphrase this. I can't put my finger on it, but for incentive programs, what is the pulse or the feeling on now having planners want to take the meetings international versus domestic. And Jill, I would love to get some insight on what you're seeing because you're operating meetings
and incentives.
Yeah. What's the feeling about international over moving forward and kind of on the back end of the tornado or hurricane, as Bill said?
Right.
What's the feeling internationally of how they're going to come back and kind of book these incentive programs that are coming from, let's say, U.S.?
Well, that's a great question. We've seen a strong shift to moving programs that were in 2020 internationally to 2021 and beyond, especially seeing 22 and 23 as a great time now to plan for those incentives in international markets. We have seen definitely in the short term that a lot of our international incentives that were going to be in 2020 moving domestically. And that's just addressing that confidence, right, of that traveler to do that trip internationally in the next 3 to 6 months. So where we have seen a short-term shift to domestic, long-term, international definitely still in play. And we have a lot of clients we're working with now that are really looking at 21, 22, 23 and beyond, trying to get those locked in now. Because compression was an issue before all this. It's going to be going forward. So definitely a big move towards international going forward.
Yeah. Cara, any insight just on what's happening internationally, whether it be Caribbean or in some other international capacity?
Well, our hotels are all domestic other than my Canadian hotels in Montreal and Toronto, right? But we do have an incentive customer advisory board and a group customer advisory board. Like Jill is hearing, here's the truth. I mean, I think we're kind of hearing that people are wanting to stay a little closer to home. I think some people are still going to operate their traditional incentives with, maybe, within regional markets, drivable markets, places that are, easy to get to. We're also, looking at, for some customers, some abbreviated incentives, just, versus, the traditional length of time that maybe they tighten things up. It's a little shorter, a little closer to home, but, hearing very similar things. And, I'll add just one last thought. I think it's important for everybody to consider before, you guys all wrap up is that, we talk a lot from an industry perspective just about one of the most valuable currencies we have right now from an industry perspective is our shared knowledge. And, our HPN partners, I mean, we have great respect for all of you. You book all brands, you book all hotels, you work with hundreds and hundreds of different customers. You've seen a lot of different things. Our convention services leaders and our banquet teams and our DOSMs on property, they see hundreds of programs all the time. I wouldn't be shy as you build solutions and as you have conversations to really think about broadening your conversation and broadening who you include at that table. And I think, a lot of interesting perspectives and a lot of creativity and collaboration in this industry has led us to some interesting solutions. So, don't be dismissive of, that collective intelligence and the value of that. And here's the thing, I think sometimes we see the same faces around the table include your youngest associates, this is their industry and their future, include some different people that are going to be a part of meetings moving forward. And we're just really excited to see the momentum. So thanks again.
Yeah, awesome. And Cara, thanks so much for taking the time. I know your time's valuable. You only have an entire.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys.
You only have an entire.
It's an honor to be a part of the HPN Dream Team today.
Yes.
Great partner, and we really love you joining us today.
We do.
So, Mr. Kilburg, I'm going to kind of turn it back to you. Before I do that, I'll just say thank you to our audience for chiming in. Thank you for the participation. We'll get questions answered that we didn't get to today, but I loved hearing the shout outs and seeing our friends. And we're going to do this again soon. And what I don't mean is this webcast, but we're going to be together soon, and we're going to be on a stage. And I'm going to have Jill and Bill and Cara, right beside me, and you all in an audience where we can see and touch you. So this thing is turning, and this chapter is being written. So I'm looking forward to it. So Bill, I'm gonna give it back to you to close us out, sir.
Okay, cool. So I'll say it one more time. I see the backside of the hurricane. I think what's dropped is going to drop. Obviously, Jill and Cara talked about execution, in the fall, and what that's going to look like. And there's always going to be a space issue, and there's going to be a, social D issue. But if everybody's kind and caring and thoughtful, which Jill may have said sometime during this call, we will all work through it. Okay. If you're a planner and you're grappling with an issue and you want one of us to chat about it, just email help@hpnglobal.com, and we'll, even if we didn't do the contract, nobody cares here. Like, we're here to help, right? That's the whole point of this. And together we're going to rewrite the book on this industry over the next year. And that's going to take planners, that's going to take people in our capacity, that's going to take hoteliers like Cara, who are thoughtful and smart. So together, let's rewrite the book. That's all I got.
All right. Well, listen, thank you again for joining us, everybody. And we're going to probably do another one of these. I think they're informative. I love the unique perspective. So everyone have a great and safe weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cara. Okay. We appreciate the time. Okay. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.